are Heather and Paul Christie.
And for over 12 years, we've worked with executives and entrepreneurs to accelerate change in every aspect of their business.
Because we are in the fastest paced business environment that anyone has ever seen before.
So join us for the Evolve to Win show. Hi, and welcome to another Evolve to Win show with Heather and Paul.
If you want to increase your results, if you want to increase your effectiveness, the best way to do that is get more intentional about your learning and your growth.
Please tell.
Well, this show really is all about leadership, right? It's about leadership. It's about success. And one of the things that I learned from John Maxwell years ago is the law of the lid. So I want to share with you what the law of the lid is all about. And then I want you to kind of talk about your experience with it and get your spin on it. So the law of the lid is written about in John Maxwell's 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership book. And if you haven't read that book, I highly recommend you pick it up. So it's got some of the basic fundamentals. Law number one is the law of the lid. And here's how it goes. He basically says that every single one of us has a certain level of leadership. So he usually uses a scale from 1 to 10. And wherever you are in your leadership, wherever that lid is, that is the cap on your effectiveness. So let's say that the scale from 1 to 10, let's say that your leadership lid right now. So as a leader, I would score myself, pretend I'm a 7. Well, if I'm a 7 and that's my leadership lid, my organization can never outgrow that lid. So my organization is going to be more like a 6, but it's definitely not going to be higher than a 7.
Yeah.
And so if you want to increase your effectiveness, you've got to get intentional about your own growth, about your development as a leader. Because in order to grow your results, in order to grow your effectiveness as a leader, you just got to grow you, and then the results go along with it. Does that make sense?
Got it, yes.
But something that's really important that I'm going to...
Can I just ask you a question, though?
Yeah.
Do you really think you're a 7?
No, I said let's pretend I'm a 7.
Oh, okay.
I'm really a 10. No, I mean...
So this is the way you get good feedback, too, right?
Yeah.
So
where would I score myself?
If you ask me what your leadership...
No one asked you.
Oh, okay. Well, you may ask me later, right?
It's interesting because I didn't know you were going to ask me to score myself, and then I'll turn around and get to ask you to score yourself too.
I will.
Where would I put myself right now in my leadership lid? It's really interesting because in the past I would have scored myself probably around a 6 or a 7, and that's many years ago.
Yeah. And
when I look back at myself and how much I had grown up until that point, I look back now and go, oh my gosh, you were probably more at like a 3 or maybe a 4.
Yeah.
So I tend to be a little bit more reserved in my scoring of myself. And I'm going to say that maybe I'm around a 6 at this stage. And, but I don't look at 6 as a bad number. I don't think 6 is a reflection of, I'm just above mediocre as a leader. It's that I've really expanded my sights on what leadership means and how many people we have the capacity to influence. And as I grow, I learn how much I didn't know.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. And can we quantify to leadership? So when you say leadership lid, and what makes up leadership? So we know that leadership has to do with influence. We also know that it has to do with just your knowledge and expertise, the way that you can lead people, all of these different aspects of leadership. Do you have any more that you would add to that?
Well, leadership is really such a massive, massive topic, but I agree with you when you use the word influence. I mean, I think ultimately we can judge our leadership capacity, our leadership ability based on how many and who we influence, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's probably one of the best measures. And then you probably have to look a little deeper into, what does influence really mean? There are many different ways that we can measure that, really, looking in the mirror as we look at the results around us.
And I have a question for you. So who would you say that is an impactful leader that you've had, at work or
in my personal world? Okay.
Yes, anywhere.
Yeah, you know what? The first person who pops into my mind for me is Dr. Cornaros.
Mm-hmm.
So you know about Dr. Cornaros because I've talked to you about him quite a bit. So he was a professor of mine in college when I was at Benedictine University. And Benedictine University. He was someone so impactful in my world because at that time I was drifting quite a bit. I didn't know what my purpose was. I didn't know where I was headed out of college. And he really helped guide me to go and take the LSAT and go to law school. And he not only really shaped my thinking around becoming an attorney, he built me up. He made me believe in myself when I really didn't have that belief on my own.
So that's a massive part of being a leader, is really being able to build up the people that you work with or that you lead, right?
Yeah, it's really about bringing out the best in someone, right? Helping to tap into the strengths that someone has. We all have mad strengths. And yet most of us are not familiar enough with what those strengths are, so we don't know how to tap into them. We don't know how to create that vision for ourselves. Sometimes we need someone to help us navigate. And so I looked at Dr. Cornaros for a few things. Number one, he was an incredible navigator for me. He helped me see a vision for my life that I hadn't seen. Number two, he helped build my confidence, in part just my belief in myself, but he also helped me by providing an action plan that I could continue to improve my skills and grow in my confidence. So he helped me get an internship with a U.S. congressman back when I was in college. Now, I didn't understand this at all. This internship thing was basically a job that I had to pay for, right? Because I had to pay to take credit hours, get credit for this internship. So I paid money to go to work for no compensation. So this is something I never would have done on my own. And quite frankly, he really had to talk me into this because I was used to having part-time jobs at the time where I actually earned minimum wage or more. So he got me set up with this amazing, amazing opportunity to work for someone who also was an incredible leader, an incredible influencer. So he got me set on that path. And, you know, had it not been for Dr. Cornaros, I have a strong feeling that I would not have gone to law school and become a lawyer. I really don't know what that path would have become for me.
And if you look back now and you scored Dr. Cornaros for his leadership skills 1 to 10 or 0 to 10, how would you rate him?
Gosh, I think that I would have scored him extremely high, like up around a 9. Right?
Knowing what you know now.
Knowing what I know now. Yeah. And the reason I say that is because although he may not have had a massive impact on a massive number of people, the impact that he had was so specific to individual students of his. You know, he didn't just give me a little bit of time. He really took an interest. He took the time to get to know me, to guide me, to help me along the way. Everything from letters of recommendation to how to fill out that application to how to study for the LSAT. I mean, it was, for me, it was at least a 9. And the only reason I don't give him a 10 is because I think there's always growth opportunities.
And is leadership really about inspiring others to be the best person that they can be? Is it the best person, or is it just the best they could be?
Yeah.
Is that really what leadership is?
I think that is a huge, huge aspect of leadership. But I think there's 2 pieces to leadership, really. I think if you break leadership down into 2 components, there's a big component, which is self-leadership. How do you lead you? Which for me is always my biggest struggle. And then there's the second aspect of leadership is how do you lead others? Now, how you lead others, helping someone else become the best they can be, I think is a massive part. Because when you think about that, if I go at it with the intention, working with anybody, go at it with the intention of helping you be at your best, that is automatically going to gain trust and respect from you, isn't it? I mean, if my intention is authentic. But isn't that the same
thing as the self-leadership? Isn't self-leadership, if you are leading others and you're pouring everything into them and they are getting massive amount of value and they're looking at you as an 8, 9, or a 10 as a leader, isn't that fulfilling the whole self-leadership? Isn't that truly what leadership is?
I think it's a piece, Paul, but I really think that the self-leadership is also about caring for yourself, growing yourself. It's what John Maxwell talks about with his leadership lit, right? Is that, I mean, I can be great at working with you and building relationship and helping you believe in you and helping you discover and understand your strengths and how to intentionally tap into those. And I could be doing a great service for you, but what if I'm spending so much time on you that I'm neglecting my continued growth path, right? There are people out there who give so much to other people, so much of themselves that they actually put themselves on the back burner. And the reality is in leadership in life, if you're not growing, you're dying. And so I think it's really important that, in my mind anyway, I mean, there's no right or wrong answer, but this is my firm belief, is that there are two very distinct aspects to leadership. One is self-leadership. It's that intentional, constant commitment to my own growth and development. Mm-hmm. I mean, again, I look back at myself, 10 years ago, let's say, when we were newer in this business, and I felt like I was kind of killing it in leadership because I was studying so much and I was learning and I was growing. I was making massive strides. But remember, because I was, my lid was so low before that any growth seemed, monumental for me. And as I've continued to grow over the years, I really recognized that this whole thing is a growth path and that you never arrive, right? There never is such a thing as a 10 in leadership lid, I don't think. I mean, I think that's kind of ethereal because every time you grow a little bit, you recognize there's more.
Okay. Then what that means is that, yes, if you are, so in our business, you are the leader. You are my leader.
Oh, I'm here to take me to your leader.
But somebody has to be a leader in the business, right? No matter what, even when you have a 2-person business and we have, contractors and other people that work with us, but you are the leader.
But I want to distinguish this right now.
Yeah.
I have the title that gives me that leadership authority, the final decision making.
Yeah, that's a great point.
I am no more of a leader in this business than you are, right? When you think about taking personal responsibility for leadership.
Absolutely. I totally understand that. And I would say that the reason I look at you as a leader is because you have worked a ton on your self-leadership, consuming content, really understanding how to, and you work with a lot more people than I do in general. So you have more experience in that. And so I look up to you with your experience and your knowledge as a leader of our company. Yes, I have leadership qualities as well, but I'm not leading as many people as you are.
So that may be true. And yet I love that you actually brought this up because I think that this is something so incredible to distinguish for everyone who's listening. So when you think about the leadership lid, one of the reasons that I love, I am so attracted to helping people. Yeah, to you too. One of the reasons I'm so attracted to helping people develop themselves as leaders is that for as much as John Maxwell talks about this leadership lid, I don't ever want anyone to confuse that lid with leadership potential. Leadership potential is unlimited. We all have complete control over how much we grow as leaders. And anyone and everyone has the capacity to be able to continue your growth when you get intentional about growing yourself, when you get intentional about learning and development, personal, professional growth. And, very well, I've had some peaks and valleys in terms of my level of commitment and my intentionality behind my growth. One of the biggest obstacles that we face as we grow is don't ever get stuck in this place of thinking, oh, I already know that, or I've already learned that. So, for every book that you read, for every seminar that you attend, every coach who you work with, we learn and we learn and we learn, but you never arrive. And the best of the best leaders, they know this through and through. They are absolutely committed to their continuous learning. Now, I don't know how many of them have been like me where you go through periods and you just, you say, I really want to just read a fiction book right now. I like enough of the self-growth and self-help and personal and professional development because at some point, for me, it gets a little bit overwhelming. And then I will go back and I'll listen to or I'll read something that I've read before. And what's crazy is when you pick up a book, take Think and Grow Rich as an example. Okay, Napoleon Hill's classic book on success. The first time I read that book was probably 15 years ago. And quite honestly, I didn't even get through it because I didn't really understand. It was kind of boring to me. I didn't really connect with it. And we just stayed consistent every year, again and again and again, reading this book. The way the book reads to me today is completely different from how that book read to me the first several times that I picked it up, because my lid has been raised. And so you see things differently. You take it in differently. You understand it differently. You've had that happen, yes?
I have. But so are you saying that this may be a stupid question, but I know on our show
there are no stupid questions.
Can you be a leader if you're not in a leadership role and you're an employee in a company? Obviously, yes, it doesn't have anything to do with being a title, but are you leading even when you're not leading? Or do you have to be intentional about your leadership? Do you even know what I'm saying?
I kind of understand the question. I'm going to respond to it and you tell me if I'm even close to what you're trying to ask here. So what I understand of the question to be is whether or not you've got a title that makes you a formal leader for someone. So whether or not you have direct reports, anyone can be a leader, right? We all agree with that.
Yeah. It's either are you a poor leader or are you a great leader? Everybody's a leader, right? In one way or in another.
Everyone's influencing in some way or another.
Everybody's influencing, right? So if we're all influencing, we are in some way or some matter, we are a leader. So even people that are not trying to lead, they may be poor leaders, but they're leading somebody. They're influencing something, right?
Yeah, everybody influences someone. And when you think about influence, you think about the impact that you have on someone.
On people, yes.
And the impact that you have in every encounter is either going to be positive and bring you closer to that person. So
that's a great point.
Or it's going to be negative and it's going to push you further away, and it is going to impact your ability to lead that person 100% of the time.
So I got it now. So it's not the 1 to 10. There's actually the negative leader.
There's a negative.
There's a negative leader, like the negative to negative 1 to negative 10. There are people who are negatively impacting.
Absolutely.
At work, they're not happy with themselves. They're not happy. They're actively disengaged at their job. Mm-hmm. They are not only not leading, but they are colluding and they are driving other people to be in a negative. I just wanted to make that point. I don't want to get into that at all, but I as I was thinking about this, there has to be a baseline. The baseline is, just you start off as a 0, but there has to be the negative as well.
Yeah.
There are negative
I've never really thought about
it,
but absolutely you're right. And I've always thought about that as somewhere who's like in that range of 1 or 2, right? Where they just have so much to grow. But you're right that to be a leader, you've got to be in a positive mindset. You've got to be in a positive space, even at a 1, right? So
you don't get to be a 1.
So what's that negative scale? And if we go back, and I know I cite this all the time ad nauseum, but you go back to the Gallup polls results on engagement levels, and our engagement levels are so poor in the United States. They're not much better worldwide, but we're around a 33% engagement level, right? And the highest level of engagement is among managers and executives. And that's at a whopping 38%, last statistics I've seen. So if you think about that, if only 38% of our managers are engaged, and you're thinking about a manager as somebody who is a leader, what does that say for the rest of those managers and leaders? Because if you're disengaged as a manager, you're probably on that negative side of the scale. There's a good chance that you're a reason that your employees around you are also disengaged and or leaving the company, especially top performers, because a top performer is never, ever going to stick around a weak, poor manager.
Right.
Unless they have an incredible vision about how they're going to surpass that terrible manager. So yeah, I guess there is a negative scale.
Yeah, and I think that there's, and that's why a lot of, businesses, even larger businesses fail. I mean, they fail because of poor leadership, right? So they're saying, you say it's poor leadership, but if you were really to rate it as, from the negative to the positive, they're either in the middle, right, at 0, or they're in the negative, because if the business is not thriving or it's not even doing that well, it's actually going out of business, there's something seriously wrong with the leader. Now, it doesn't mean that they're negative. It just means that maybe they are at a 1 or a 2 in their leadership and really can't lead people, or just keep making the mistakes over and over. Because I think in general, we do, if we are conscious of it, we will learn from our experiences and find out what's working and what doesn't work, because most people do want to, in business, want to have a better business, or want to have a better department, or want to make other people better because they want to make themselves look good as well. It is somewhat of an ego thing. But, and that's why when companies, when somebody takes over a company, or they merge or whatever, and it's a company that's maybe faltering, one of the first things that they do is get rid of the leader. And why do you get rid of the leader? Because, well, obviously, if they've led to the company to a bankruptcy, or to a place where it hasn't been performing that well at all, then it really starts from the leader. So you have to get rid of that person to reset. And for that person that's losing their job and being replaced as the leader of the company, they have a lot of opportunity to reflect, be aware of what happened, reflect on what happened, and then see if there's, what is it that they need to improve on, where, to move themselves forward, and to start climbing that leadership ladder, and increasing their own leadership skills and talents.
Well, and what you're describing too, when you have turnover at the highest level of leadership, there's a lot of different reasons that could happen. But I'm talking about when it truly is. I mean, yes, for political reasons, there's things like that, but we're just talking strictly about poor performance in a business. Well, but a lot of times poor performance comes down to the fact that change is not happening quickly enough, right? So one of the top initiatives for any leader is really knowing how to influence change, okay? So if you're not changing in this fast-paced business environment, you're dying. You are not going to make it. And so the rate of change, obviously change is the most difficult thing that you could ever influence someone to do. You're trying to influence someone to break out of their habitual way of being, right?
Yep.
And get them to do something new and different and innovative. And that's a very, very difficult task. So the level of trust you need to have, the level of relationship you need to have as a leader to be able to have that kind of impact and make that, influence someone to make those changes, it's a very tall order. So I think a lot of times you just need to shake it up a little bit, because someone gets so stuck in the way things are done. It's difficult to see outside of, the standard operating procedures.
Okay. And for our listeners, if you're interested in finding out, if I ask you right now, as you're listening to this, and I say, think about what you would give yourself as a leader.
Yourself.
Yeah, what would you score yourself as a self-assessment? What would you score yourself as a leader? And doesn't necessarily mean you have to be leading a company or organization or a department or anything, but you just, as a leader, what would you honestly give yourself? And so, Heather, what would you honestly give yourself?
Well, what I said is I gave myself a 6.
You give yourself a 6.
Yeah, I actually score myself lower today than I did, 10, 12 years ago, because the more I know, the more I recognize, the more I have to grow.
Yeah.
So where would you score yourself on a scale from 1 to 10?
And I'll answer that in a second. But then the other side of this is to ask, people who you believe you lead, what is it that their assessment of you is?
Oh, yeah. So now it's time for me to ask you, what score would you give me on a scale from 1 to 10 as a leader?
I think 6 is probably a great number for you.
Why?
I think 6 is, and I think in our scoring level, not what level, but the 1 to 10 is pretty high. It's pushing it. To be an 8 or a 9, you're really maximizing it. I think there's opportunities for you in the way that you lead. I think that your behavioral style drives you. You have to drive in this business, and for you to switch gears and have to be different to be able to lead me is a real challenge. And I think that is for most leaders, most people who are high performers and drivers in business. It's more difficult for them to stop, slow down, slow down to speed up. We did a Facebook Live, or we did a podcast on that, on the slow down to speed up, I think.
Yes.
But for higher performing people, I think it's more difficult, but that's where your real opportunity is, because for people who are already slow that need to speed up like me, it's easy to see, because I just say, wow, if I had that behavioral style, if I had those, that way of being, if I could slow down and really get organized and really get strategic, and really help other people help me get the things that I want, I could totally blow it up. And I think that's where I see there's more opportunity for you, and that you being a 6, if you were to slow down a little bit, get more strategic, really start to figure out who are the people that can help me do these things. And that takes more time, and you just don't really want to give that much time to it. But if you can really identify those things and then be able to delegate them, that's going to maximize your leadership skills, be able to spend more time with people. But just by doing that, you're giving the people who are helping you out, you're giving them that comes off. For me personally, that would be a huge leadership step up for you. So leadership is different for me. Leadership, if you were to do what I was just talking about, which is to slow down, get more strategic, get more delegating, really understand. To me, that is taking it to a 7 or an 8.
Got it.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. And if there's anybody who's watching this on video who's a body language expert, they can see like the tension in my face and the fact that I just want to just be done with this.
Yeah, but
hold on, I'm still talking. So the idea of me needing to slow down for you, like, how about you speed up a little bit? How about you just take on additional responsibility without me having to stop what I'm doing and slow down? This is exactly.
We're
talking
about just you as the leader right now. We haven't flipped the tables yet and talked about me as a leader.
I understand that.
Going to be a lot of the opposite there, but for you, that's what you're just asking me. What would make you a 7, an 8, a 9, or a 10, and that is one of the blind spots. That is
it's not a blind spot. I'm proving your point right now, but you keep talking, right? I want you to stop talking. So I'm proving his point. The idea of slowing down my productivity to work with you is a massive challenge for me, right? I think that I do extremely well slowing down for my clients. Do you agree with that?
Yes, you do.
I think I do. I do extremely well taking my very high energy, very assertive style into a super great listener and that kind of thing. I've taught myself how to do that. I have not even come close to mastering how I can do that same thing with you. And I think there's 2 pieces to it. One is that it's just difficult to slow down for me, right? Because I've got so many balls in the air.
It's the cobbler's kids don't have any shoes, right? It's the same thing. It's that you'll do it for your customers and clients, just as the cobbler would,
right.
But the kids don't have the shoes. So it's easier to do it for somebody else, paying clients for servicing those clients. But when it comes back to, it's just more
to our own business. Yeah.
Right.
And the thing is, as a high performer, like we have such a great business and we're producing so much. I have the misimpression, right? The false impression that if I were to slow down, our productivity would slow down versus you slow down to speed up, right? I know better logically. I'm crystal clear on that, but it's just in my habits and practices, I'm still on the go all the time.
And did you say you gave yourself a 6?
Yes.
I would give you a 7.
Why did
I
you
would actually
change your
give you
number?
a 7. Because as I just think about it as a 6, I think you do a really, really good job. You've done a lot better job over the last couple of years, especially over the last year, of taking more time and becoming more strategic. So I think you're underestimating yourself, which is unusual for most people. Most people will overestimate.
Well, I did. Yeah. Well, I've learned. I have overestimated myself for a long time. And so I know that even years from now, when I look back at this, hopefully I will have grown so much that I look back at this and go, you weren't a 6, you were like a 3, right? Yeah. Because the idea is we want to look different next year from how we look this year, right? If you're not always having new experiences, if you're not completely shaking up your business model to the point where your business looks different next year from this year, then your business is probably dying a slow death, right?
And let's just take a look at what happened. And so this is one of the challenges that you could have as you do a self-assessment and then you ask others for feedback. It's a little scary when you do that because you can get into a contentious type of situation where, somebody may try and give you feedback and it may not make you feel good. So just be aware that that can happen and you have to be open for it. But that's all part of being a great leader, is being open to it. A lot of companies use 360s. I mean, in 360s being that you're getting feedback from people that are above you, below you, on each side, right? But in this is just a simple assessment on leadership and your leadership. And you can get a just a really basic, pretty good idea of where you are. From
if people will be honest with you.
And I say we do it anonymous for sure.
One of the things that I know about you, that's why people do.
So aren't you going to ask me what mine?
I'm not there yet. One of the reasons people do 360s is because of having that anonymous feedback. People are more likely to be honest with you. There's a lot of people who really, really shy away from conflict and don't have that capacity to be direct. So an anonymous 360 is a great way to get feedback, but you're right. Not everybody is really, really open for and seeking feedback. Really getting in touch with those blind spots. Like for me, I wouldn't call it a blind spot because I'm really familiar with it. I understand it very well, and I bump up against it a lot. I try really hard to slow down and get more strategic, and yet it's still not comfortable. Like it still is. It's not natural for me yet because I haven't had that complete breakthrough there where I've gotten systematic about it. So 360s are good, but we can also tell by doing assessments, right?
Right.
I mean, one of the things that we have really, really niched into as our expertise in this business is what we're known for these days is giving assessments and helping people by debriefing the assessment in a way that we can show someone, even without that pure 360 feedback or to support the why behind the feedback, we can tell exactly what's going on with someone. We can find their strengths and we can find their limitations even without getting other people involved. And it is magic because here's what happens. If I'm the one responsible for filling out my self-assessment and the results come back and they show me my strengths and they show me my weaknesses, I can't really fight up against those weaknesses because I'm the one who gave that feedback. And as long as I was being honest, the results are the results, right?
Right.
So I think it's really powerful for people to be able to see in black and white and see graphs that will show you exactly who you are, where you excel, and what your challenges might be, right?
Right.
Okay, let's turn it over to you. Let's talk about your leadership. Where would you?
You've taken too long now. I don't want to talk about it.
Where would you score yourself in terms of your leadership?
I've taken a lot of time to think about this, and I would give myself a 4.
Okay, and why do you give yourself a 4?
I think overall, I'm pretty positive around the idea of leading people. Like I like the idea of it. I wish I was more influential. So if influence is leadership and leadership is influence, I don't feel like I influence at a very high level. Mm-hmm. Not as many people as I probably could. In certain situations, I think of myself as a pretty good leader and an influencer and that people may want to follow. And in that example, it would be more around like in hobbies and activities and things like that. But here on the job, I think I leave a lot of the leadership up to you. I think, and maybe it's just, because I prefer to be more, what would I say? Help me out here.
In the background?
Yeah, more in the background,
Mm-hmm.
more in the, introverted type of person. So it's, I think it's a challenge for, people that are introverted to be, looked at as leaders because and most leaders being influential, you're the outgoing person that's getting people pumped up and excited about it. But, I do really, and I think as far as in our business, I think I'm massively influential to you in a positive way. I think that
hugely.
I give you a lot of really good feedback. I think I give you also, when I think you're doing a great job, I'm your number one cheerleader. I'm somebody who's always looking out for you and got your back when it comes to, business and things like that. And I'll tell you the things that you sometimes don't want to hear. And I'll always.
He always tells me just as it is, which seriously,
so I
appreciate. I appreciate it so much. And I think that.
And I went low because I know you can't go any lower than that.
Well, I think that you underestimate yourself, which I would expect from you because I know that you're very critical of yourself. I would expect that you would give yourself a lower number, but you just tapped into something that I think is really critical. When you think about your influence on me, even if you're putting me out there more as the influencer of our team, you think about the impact of that and how many people you have the ability to influence by helping me be better.
Mm-hmm.
It's a hard job, but it's a really big job too, right?
Yeah.
To help me be a better person, to be a better leader. And you do that consistently. You are my number one supporter is an understatement. You always have my back no matter what we're doing. And that's just, you can't underestimate the impact of that.
No, so I think that's a good point. And, if you're somebody who's listening to this and you're more of an introverted type of person as well, and you like the smaller groups and you maybe don't feel like you're leading that many people, you can make a massive impact on, and maybe it's just one or two people. It's not going to be, hundreds or thousands of people that you're going to influence. Maybe it's not something that you even are interested in doing, but you can. So leadership, and I think this is, for me, this is kind of a little bit of a breakthrough too, is just saying that out loud, that I assume that being a great leader, you have to be leading thousands of people, hundreds of people, thousands, tens of thousands, in a company, and you're the Jack Welches, or you're, of GE, or, the Elon Musks, or all of these people who lead, great companies, lead people. But, even Dr. Carnaros.
It's not easy.
You brought up, he impacts people. How many people would give him an 8 or a 9 or a 10 like you did? Maybe he didn't have as much impact on their lives. So I guess we do, as we're taking a look at this leadership lid, we get to create our own type of who we want to impact and how we want to impact people, right?
Yeah.
And you can either pick and choose it and go individually, or you can try and influence, a large group of people just by being who you are. And it really just comes down to who you are.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it does. And I do think that it makes a massive difference who you're influencing. And I think as you continue to grow in your level of leadership, who you're influencing is a major distinction, right? Because when you get to the point of influencing the influencers, the impact that you can make, even if you're talking about a much smaller group, the ripple effect of having an influence in developing those influencers can be more massive than you could ever do on your own.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's all good.
Okay, good.
And this, my friends, is why we love working in the space of leadership, is because your leadership really is infinite and it's up to you. It's a choice. And we know that everyone, if they choose to, has the capacity to improve and increase that leadership lid. And every single time you're increasing your leadership lid, you're increasing your effectiveness, you're increasing your results, you're increasing the results of those around you and your organization. It's a really cool thing.
Yeah. Good point. Good
All right.
Conversation.
Well, thanks for tuning in to this episode of Evolve to Win with Heather and Paul, and produced in partnership with Gulf Shore Business Magazine. If you haven't yet reached out to us at heatherchristie.com, you can sign up for our leadership list and have access to a number of different resources that we share with our group. And be sure to connect with us on social media if you haven't done so already.
Yeah, connect with us on the Heather Christie Facebook page. We do Facebook Lives on Tuesdays, and we do them on Mondays. I'm sorry. We do that on Mondays, and then we do our podcasts are released out on Tuesdays. Yes. So if you haven't subscribed to the Evolve to Win podcast on Apple iTunes podcast or on Spreaker,
Google
or you
Play.
Can watch us on our YouTube channel, go ahead and do that.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, cool. All right. Bye now.
Awesome show. See you later. Bye now.